Hey everybody, welcome to The Rundown. I'm Victor Lucas, and it is PALWORLD'S world, and we're just living in it. This is a crazy phenomenon that's happening in the video game industry. I didn't even know about PALWORLD, I have to be honest, until I was streaming another Code Recollection last Friday, and now over the weekend, PALWORLD has gone on to sell more than 5 million copies of the game for PC. It's also available for Game Pass, and it is a massive, massive success. Everybody in the video game industry is talking about this thing. A lot of hype and a lot of speculation about how it was created and how much it copies and borrows from other existing successful formats out there. Of course, Pokemon and its connection to Pokemon is under the microscope right now because these little pals that you collect in this game where you're running around, you're hunting them and you're throwing orbs at them and collecting them, and then they become your allies for creating farmlands and creating structures and for just exploring and going all over the place. It's cooperative, it's multiplayer, it's got survival tones in there, it's got building kind of elements in there, a little bit like Fortnite. So it fuses all of these established and successful elements across a whole spectrum of very popular games into one kind of cohesive package, but it also doesn't all kind of make a lot of sense thematically. But it's fun. I've only played a little bit of the game so far. I haven't really jumped too deep into the experience, but from what I've been able to examine and enjoy so far, it has impressed me. It certainly doesn't look better than the best looking stuff out there. It has kind of a last gen vibe to it. I've been playing it on the Xbox Series X, and it's not running at a, fluid frame rate. It's still in early access. It's a game preview on Xbox, and it is in early access on PC. So they've got a lot of tuning that they can do, and boy, do they have the budget now to make this game absolutely phenomenal. And I think because it's using so many tried and true ingredients, it's going to become a real juggernaut. It's really going to be a title that a lot of people jump into and play. I can't speak to the depth of the game or the hours into it kind of joy that I would get from it, but from what I've seen so far, I can certainly see why this game is getting its hooks into people. I think you can have a lot of fun building things together and raiding different environments and different camps that people might be putting together and using your pals in all kinds of interesting ways to help you build structures and maintain farmland and things like that. I think it's very clever, and I think we're going to learn a lot about the developer and a lot about the ethics of the studio and what the sort of aspirations of the studio are. They've been well funded, well capitalized. It certainly calls into question any legal bouncing around that they may have because of similarities to things like the Pokemon characters. But I think what you can say about creature collection games and monster hunting type experiences, they've been around for a long time. It wasn't just Pokemon out there with concepts like this and characters like this. There have been a lot of other types of games out there that use so many similar types of themes, and so much of the history of video games is taking this good idea and adding this good idea and changing the aesthetic this way, and boom, it's a new experience that people really want to play. And that's kind of how games work. We get trained in the language of these experiences, and then future iterations of some of these concepts take in all of this data and these experiences, and they transform it just a little bit, and they make it something new and fresh. And this idea of being a well-armed hunter, with bow and arrow and guns and all kinds of different weaponry, and you also have these little cutesy Pokemon-like pals with you, is kind of crazy. And I don't think Nintendo and Pokemon would ever sort of merge a Fortnite kind of concept with a Pokemon kind of idea. And I think there is a business, clearly, to pursue that kind of concept, and that's what these developers have done. So they're tapping into something. I don't know what the legs on the game are going to be. I'm certainly enjoying what I've been playing so far, and I plan to play some more, and I'll stream some on our Twitch channel, twitch.tv/EPN. But I want to hear from you guys. What do you think of PALWORLD? Do you think that it's fresh enough to kind of last for a long time? Are you enjoying it? Are you hours in? Let me know in the comments below. And let's move over to the animation world, because Star Wars has revealed The Bad Batch 3. This is the final season for one of my favorite animated series of all time. I love The Bad Batch. I love them as a concept. Clone Force 99, this rogue outfit that split apart from Order 66 and hunting down all of the Jedi to kind of become mercenaries for good. I love loved this whole concept. I loved that with the Bad Batch, you could kind of separate it from the rest of Star Wars lore, and there were enough hooks to still be engaged with everything across the spectrum, but there was enough inside of the Bad Batch lore and the storytelling that you could really start to feel for these characters. And they've taken us on a journey. We've lost characters along the way. I'm not going to spoil too much because I know people haven't tuned in, but there are lots of really, really big reveals in this new trailer that they're showing off. The series returns with its final season on February 21st, and it looks like I'll be talking with some of the creatives and cast members behind Bad Batch, so I'm really looking forward to that. But I love the fact that we get little teasers of Fennec Shand and Cad Bane, and then the huge reveal of Asajj Ventress is back in the Clone Wars / Bad Batch universe, which is really cool. And the Emperor pops up in this trailer, and again voiced by Ian McDiarmid, and he is really interested in cloning Omega, who has been captured in this trailer. And that's about all I'm going to kind of talk about and spoil here, but I care about these characters. I've collected all of the action figures of the Bad Batch. I love this team, and I can't wait to see where the Bad Batch Season 3 takes us. And I'm really curious to find out if we're going to lose them all, or if there's going to be kind of a happy ending for these characters, because, of course, this takes place before events that we see transpire in things like The Mandalorian and the sequel trilogy. I just want to find out what happens to everybody, and I guess that's what we're going to do starting February 21st. Now, like a lot of you guys, I've been digging through lots and lots of information around CES 2024, and there was a lot of cool technology that was unveiled, but there were 3 or 4 things that really caught my eye. One of them was just this video keynote for the Rabbit R1, and of course AI was the whole story around CES. Everything has got AI in it. Television sets, monitors, I'm sure there were blenders with AI at CES, but there's actually this new little agent called the Rabbit R1 that is available now. You can pick it up on pre-order, and it's not that expensive, and the whole idea is that it works as kind of an agent using all kinds of apps that you might have on your phone. It's like having this assistant that you can talk to with common speech patterns, and it will do things like book flights for you or book a specific Uber ride to arrive at a specific time, and you're just chatting to this device like you would be chatting to Jarvis in your Iron Man helmet. So it's pretty cool. It's a pretty big step forward for being able to have general conversation with an AI helper, but I do get the sense that Apple and Google and all of the other cell phone manufacturers out there are going to be incorporating more general conversational elements to existing phone technology. I think that will become a huge part of the way that we interact with our devices. We're just going to talk to them, and they're going to do things for us, and it's going to get weird, but we're carrying around unbelievably sophisticated technology in our pockets already. But this Rabbit R1 is kind of disrupting the ecosystem for AI gadgets out there right now, and it does look pretty damn cool, I do have to say. And prior to CES, I was actually given some special access to what Asus had on display at the show, and of course they were all laptops all the time. They had the Zen Duo, which has an extra monitor on there, and they also had the new Zephyrus G16 and G14 laptops, which look beautiful. And I actually spoke with Asus's Sascha Kohn about some of the stuff that they had on display.
Since there's no new NVIDIA mobile GPUs coming out in 2024, we were thinking about how we can add something to the lineup that is exciting and new and different. So we focused on just the 4050, 4060, and 4070, and that allowed us to make those new G14 and G16 laptops super thin. And DLSS 3.5 Raygen plays a huge role here and allows you to get a ton of performance with those up to 3K QHD displays, even with the 4050, 4060, 4070. We've been big on OLED on our consumer laptops, and people have been begging us to bring OLED to our gaming laptops as well. And here we are today. So we brought HDR support to those panels, which they didn't have before, and also work with Samsung and NVIDIA to bring advanced Optimus and G-Sync to laptop OLED displays, which wasn't possible before. We made it happen, and yeah, the result is amazing. We've been doing dual display laptops for a couple of years now. So the first one we launched was in 2018, and it really took off during the pandemic when everybody was working from home, studying from home, and not in just one spot, but you had to constantly move around. Go to the living room, go to the kitchen maybe to do your work, and you can't just take a monitor with you everywhere. Even a portable monitor, you need to set it up. But with a dual laptop, you just have that built in, you open it up, and everything is ready. So essentially, more screen space. Anybody who's multitasking and needs more screen space. And now that the pandemic is gone, we're still doing video calls all the time, which needs extra screen space. But you don't want to just spend all the time on the video call doing just a call. You need to get other stuff done as well. You want to maybe do something else on the side, and you can do that when you have a second screen. And now with the 2024 ZenBook Duo, we give you a second full-size display, and you get a completely standard keyboard with full key travel at the usual position that everybody's used to, with a large touchpad below it, and you can transform it from that regular clamshell into a dual display workstation and back within just a mere seconds, thanks to the built-in kickstand on the back of the device. Basically, the integrated graphics in Meteor Lake is around 2 times as fast as the previous generation. That's a ton of performance, and it's close to AMD integrated graphics. Can you play games on it? Absolutely. It really depends on the game that you want to play though. So you can play some casual games, some indie games, and thanks to the integrated graphics now being ARC-based, so you have even ray tracing, in the future you'll probably be able, with more powerful integrated graphics, to play even demanding games, but we're talking about like 5 years down the road, maybe.
Yeah, they had some killer laptops at Asus, that's for sure. Actually, lots of awesome-looking laptop technology and screen technology at CES, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how Asus follows up on the ROG Ally, because clearly the handheld PC marketplace is expanding, and one of the other things that I really dug coming out of CES 2024 was that MSI is getting into the handheld PC market with their Claw device, which looks a little bit like the Asus ROG Ally. It's got the same kind of look as the Ally, the button placement, the ergonomics of everything. I can't wait to give it a hands-on review for you guys. What excites me the most about the Claw, though, is that Intel is actually providing the chip architecture on the inside, and they're going with their 14th generation chips, which are all AI infused, and I'm really anxious to see how the performance handles there, but it's cool to see that it's not just AMD making all the chips for these handheld PC devices, it's also Intel jumping into the fray, and I think what we're going to see is this ripple outward even more, and the competition is going to get pretty strong in this category, but we're going to get some phenomenal devices, and of course, as soon as MSI or Intel shoots me out one of the Claws, I will have a review for you guys. And the other thing that really impressed me, speaking of cool display technology at CES, Brian Tong was hosting some stuff for CES. He's a terrific guy, Brian, so make sure you're following his channel. But he showed off a Samsung monitor that's coming out, and this is just a prototype, so there's no model number or price or availability yet, but it is a 2D monitor that also has 3D technology built into it. So it's meant for being able to enjoy like VR-enabled content on a flat screen monitor, but it will, almost like the 3DS, you don't need glasses to enjoy the 3D visuals that are popping off of it. Brian appeared to be incredibly impressed by it, and it's really hard to show off this technology through YouTube like this, but I am excited to see what Samsung is doing here, because as far back as 13 years ago, Samsung was showing off 3D glassless monitors, so I'm sure things have progressed very far since then, and I think we are going to get some really cool 3D experiences on monitors going forward, maybe even some holographic experiences. It's going to get crazy. But those are the things that really caught my eye. Was there anything that you really dug coming out of CES? Let me know in the comments below. Now, one of the biggest stories coming out of last week in the video game space was what Xbox showed off at their Developer Direct. I enjoyed live streaming that and offering some real-time commentary over the stuff that I was seeing. Now, of course, I've had a lot of time to think about everything, and I want to talk specifically about Indiana Jones here for a second. One of the things that I noticed is that it wasn't like photoreal Harrison Ford that they modeled in the game, and once we all came to understand that it's Troy Baker that's handling the performance of the character, Troy Baker is our new Indiana Jones, I really couldn't dissociate the fact that it looked like, in the model, that they had Troy Baker and Harrison Ford meshed to the model. So every time I see Indy speaking, I also can see Troy Baker speaking and Harrison Ford speaking. It's really surreal. And I do think, and this is kind of how I felt as I was watching it in real time, that Lucasfilm and Machine Games and Todd, everybody involved, is kind of opening the door to the idea that we're going to have an interpretation that it embodies Harrison Ford, but it evolves the character so that a new performer can kind of own it. And I feel like Troy will not only handle the voice work for this game, but if we see Indiana Jones in animated form and of course in subsequent sequels or other types of video games, it definitely makes sense to take all of this work that's going into this first-person action adventure that they're building for us and make a VR version of this. That would be incredible, and I'm very, very much on board for this. I'm also totally cool with the fact that Machine Games, who has killed it with first-person games, like of course the Wolfenstein games, and then in their pedigree and their history as Starbreeze, things like the Chronicles of Riddick and the Darkness, it's a perfect fit for the studio. And I'm glad that they didn't make them stretch out and make a 3D action adventure game that was just going to be immediately compared to what Naughty Dog has done with Uncharted and what Crystal Dynamics has done with Tomb Raider. This kind of creates its own space, and I am excited. I do think that they've got more polish to do, as I was talking about in real time, but it looks incredible. I cannot be more excited for Indiana Jones, and I'm very happy that we're getting it this year, but we've got time for the developers to tune and tweak and make this just a smash success. Very stoked for that. Now, over in the movie world, we have learned today that Gillian Anderson is going to be joining the cast of Tron 3 Aries, which stars Jared Leto. We know that Evan Peters is in there, Cameron Monaghan from the Star Wars Jedi Survivor and Fallen Order games. Greta Lee, who's a big part of Apple's The Morning Show, is in this film as well. It's directed by Joachim Roning, who directed the surprisingly really good Maleficent, Mistress of Evil, which came out back in 2019. He took the reins for Tron away from Joseph Kosinski, who made Tron Legacy back in the day, which is an incredible film. And apparently there's a Tron Legacy remastered project that's in the works. Roning shared on his Instagram a little video snippet of Joseph Kosinski in an editing suite looking at the monitor of Tron Legacy being remastered. And I really hope that that means that they're going to update some of the CG visuals, which were even dated back in the day when Tron Legacy came out. But I love that movie, and I can't wait to see more of Tron 3. It's shooting now in Vancouver, and I'm sure there's a teaser that's going to be probably released later this year. It's coming out in 2025, and it's putting together a pretty freaking killer cast. Cannot wait for Tron 3 Aries. Now on Friday, I streamed a little bit of the new Nintendo Switch game, Another Code Recollection, which puts together Another Code 2 Memories, or it was originally known as Trace Memory for the Nintendo DS, as well as the never released in North America Wii game, Another Code R, Journey into Lost Memories, and it puts it into this collection. I streamed it for a little while. I was impressed by the updates to everything. It did feel like it was a little bit easier to navigate and figure things out. I didn't get super far in it. I did share it with my daughter, and she thought it was pretty cool, but it isn't the type of game that I always jump into and gravitate towards, and so I haven't shared a lot of games like this with my daughter, and I haven't played tons and tons of experiences like this. I like adventure games, but I veer more towards the action-adventure games. But I did see a tweet from game developer Benjamin Rivers. He's the guy that created Home and Alone with You and Worse Than Death, and he's a big adventure game fan. He tweeted out, really enjoying Another Code Recollection. Same story beats, different presentations and puzzles in the first game so far anyway. Ashley's Japanese VO is great, captures her smart, sometimes snippy, but heartfelt chat so well. And I got to thinking that it would be great to have Benjamin Rivers on for a second to give us an idea of why he's so impressed with this series and this new Nintendo Switch remake. Benjamin Rivers, thank you so much for joining us on the Rundown today. I saw your tweet about Another Code Recollection, and I wanted to hear from you about why this game is connecting. Why is this game so cool for you?
When the original versions of these games came out on the DS and Wii, that was a time when I rediscovered adventure games. A lot of adventure games, as I knew it, were point-and-click ones from the PC before, but at that time, developers were making these like more daring and very differently approached games on DS, Wii, and a bunch of other platforms. They were often friendlier, but had maybe more cinematic approaches, but also used puzzle solving overwhelming in a lot of interesting ways because of the devices they were on. And at that time, I just got really addicted to these, like especially Sing, who was a developer that made these original titles. Everything they did to me was a massive hit. I said, oh, there's never been a game like this, like a detective hotel crawling game and a game where you play as a teenage girl trying to find her dad. Like, there's nothing else like that.
Why do you think Nintendo saw the opportunity here to spend the investment and to bring it back and to improve everything? And are you happy with all the improvements that they made?
Well, I was shocked when at the Direct they showed this because they're like my #1 favorite games of the past several years. And I was almost in tears when they showed this because I said, as if
That's
anyone
awesome.
would ever re-release these games. I think, honestly, they are games that had a market that only now has kind of come to fruition. There are much more players, I think, who would appreciate these kinds of stories versus when they were released, and I think things were like much more action focused and a bit more sort of hard-hitting Hollywood, shooting sort of games. I think there's a ton more people who would appreciate something that's a bit more of a slow burn adventure mystery game with characters like these.
Have you ever chatted with people from Sing? I know they're a developer that doesn't make games anymore, but I'm curious, maybe at a GDC or something, you've gotten to connect with them and tell them how big of a fan of their work you were.
Yeah, the lead artist, Taisuke Kanosaki, I've talked to on Twitter, and lots of people have messaged him about his art over the years. I believe he actually did the cover art and a bunch of the new art for the remake. And I've mentioned before, like, Sing is just an absolute legend to me and a huge inspiration for the stuff that we do here. Again, getting to hear developers come back and say, like, oh, it's really great that you played our game. We weren't sure how many people played it, or we didn't know people like in Canada were obsessed over this game that we made in Japan. That's awesome. They're humans and they make cool stuff.
For those that are on the fence about another Code Recollection, what would you say to them? Why should they pay attention to this game?
You get to experience things that you just don't get to in other games. And they're like little moments. They're not big, set piece moments. They're like these very human character pieces. And once you get into them, you're going to realize how much you like the characters, how much you care about their situations, which do sort of ramp up in intensity, and how much you're going to miss them when the game is over because of how connected you become with them over time.
How, in general, do you feel then about this remake? Are you a happy customer?
Yeah, what I can say is they've kept all the storyline and all the key points, but for people who might have played the original, like how you get there is going to be different. And the puzzles are quite interesting. Some of them can be much more elaborate than they were before, but they use the DS in certain ways that were very unique to the DS. There's no way you could replicate that, even on the Switch. There's things they do here that are actually just really cool. And you're like, oh, good. I'm glad they're still thinking about, like what you can do with gyro and other things on this console. So it's delightful. It's like falling in love all over again. It's so wonderful
That's
to see
awesome.
the characters and kind of see them get their glow up and go on the adventure again.
Can you give us a taste of what you're working on and when we may see something from Benjamin Rivers?
Sure. So we are working on our 4th original IP, and I can tell you it's coming out this year, and I should be able to talk about it fairly soon. We're so close to being able to announce it, and I'm so excited. So Let's just say that if you like the Another Code art collection, once you see our new game and its color palette, you'll understand why I like those games so much.
Very cool. Well, we'll have to have you back for an episode of Vic's Basement, and we'll get right into it.
Amazing. That'd be awesome.
It was great catching up with Benjamin, and I'm always happy to hear that game makers are obsessed with new releases out there. So I'm going to do that a little bit more often on the rundown, so watch out for that for sure. And I've got one final thing to talk about. RoboCop Rogue City was one of the best games of 2023. It was really fun, but the most beautiful thing about the game is how true to the franchise it is. It really adores its subject matter and honors the whole 80s aesthetic of RoboCop so beautifully. And what they've done is they've just launched a new game plus for the game and tweaked it and enhanced it. So clearly it's a game that's getting a lot of love out there from the fan base and from just video game fans in general. But Teon, the developers that put it together, they're clearly giving the game a lot more love and a lot more incentive for players to check this game out, which I highly encourage you to do. In fact, you can check out my review right now. But for those of you that have played through it, now you get a chance to go through with New Game Plus. And for those of you that haven't jumped in, here's another incentive for you to check out RoboCop Rogue City. All right, you guys, that's going to do it for the rundown today. Thank you so much for watching. If you dug the video, make sure you hit that thumbs up button. If you're not subscribed already, please do that if you can. And make sure you're also checking out our live stuff on twitch.tv/EPN. I stream there all the time. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon. And until then, play forever.